In 1864, Pius IX. Nor are things any better or circumstances calmer in America, where some regions are so hostile to Catholics that their government seem to deny by their actions the Catholic faith they claim to profess. In fact, there, for the last few years, a ferocious war on the Church, its institutions, and the rights of the Apostolic See has been raging. Venerable brothers, it is surprising that in our time such a great war is being waged against the Catholic Church. Let's see what Pope Leo XIII in Humanum Genus said, April 20th, 1884. He said, at this period, point 2, the partisans of evil is what he called them, seem to be combining together. Who might that be? And to be struggling with united vehemence, led on or assisted by that strongly organized and widespread association called the Freemasons. Point 3. It is our office, he said, to point out the danger, to mark who are the adversaries. Point 4, he mentions capital enemy and dark conspiracy. He's the third one in a row to mention that there's a conspiracy. This is contiguous. This is continuous. And already we've gone from 1832 to 1884. Point 6, this Apostolic See denounced the sect of the Freemasons and publicly declared its constitution as contrary to law and right, to be pernicious no less to Christendom than to the state. It forbade anyone to enter the society. Point 7, its consequence, the sect of Freemasons grew with a rapidity beyond conception, and in the course of a century and a half, that's 150 years, grew until it came to be able by means of fraud and of audacity to gain such entrance into every rank of the state as to seem to be almost its ruling power. I want to pause right there for just 1 second. Malachi Martin, who I don't trust one iota, said, the New World Order is very inimical to traditional religion. It's very inimical to Christianity and especially inimical to Roman Catholicism. And I'm going to tell you right now, most especially to traditional Catholicism. These popes knew all of this. The authority of rulers despised, sedition permitted and approved, and the popular passions urged on to lawlessness with no restraint save that of punishment. A change and overthrow, he said, of all things will necessarily follow. It will logically follow. If this continues, there will be an overthrow of all things. Yea, this change and overthrow is deliberately planned. We pray and beseech you, point 31, venerable brethren. He's not talking to the laity here. He's talking to the priests and the bishops, to join your efforts with ours and earnestly to strive for the extirpation, that's removal of this foul plague which is creeping through the veins of the state. We wish it to be your rule, first of all, to tear away the mask from Freemasonry. Let people see it for what it is. Under the advice of Pope Leo XIII, let no man think that he may, for any reason whatsoever, join the Masonic sect if he values his Catholic name and his eternal salvation, as he ought to value them. Devote the greatest part of your care to, he's talking about the children, to their instruction, and do not think that any precaution can be great enough. Pope Leo said, do not think that any precaution can be great enough. In other words, even if you take caution, it may not be enough. How well must we prepare our children? They are unwary, they are not cautious, they are inexperienced. Don't we love our kids enough to give them eternal salvation? Don't we love them enough to encourage them and bring them up in the faith? Let parents, religious instructors, and priests use every opportunity in their Christian teaching of warning their children and pupils of the infamous nature of these societies. Skip that. Now, that was in 1884. Funny enough, should arrive at my house a reply by letter to Humanum Genus, which, of course, was Pope Leo XIII, by Albert Pike, who is also a pope. He's a pope too. He just happens to be the pope of the other hierarchical church, the Freemasonic church, which is a hierarchy like the Catholic Church. The devil copies everything, you know. He's not very creative. Albert Pike, in his letter to the Pontiff, Pope Leo XIII, speaking as a representative for the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, said, quote, Rome does claim the right to prohibit precisely now, as she always did. She is never tolerant except upon compulsion. And Masonry denies her right to interfere with the free exercise of opinion. You see, people who want to have their opinion about everything essentially are Freemasons, whether they're in the fraternity or whether they're not. In their philosophy, they're already in. It will be said that the English-speaking Freemasonry will not receive Catholics into its bosom. This is not true. It will not receive Jesuits, because no oath that it can administer would bind the conscience of a Jesuit. You see, when that oath is administered to the Freemason, it binds his conscience. Albert Pike knows that, but the men whose consciences are bound in the lodge do not know that they are making a pact with the devil. He said about this encyclical, it proved upon perusal to be a declaration of war. That's another time we've heard about war. And a signal for a crusade against the rights of men. You see, the church has a crusade against the rights of men, says Pike, against the separation of church and state and the confinement of the church within the limits of its legitimate functions. Like not exposing heresy, like pulling people out of paganism. He says, Freemasonry is mightier than the Church of Rome, for it possesses the invincible might of the spirit of the age, the new age, and it will continue to grow in strength and greatness while that church, in love with doting upon the old traditions. 2 Thessalonians, Paul tells us to maintain the traditions of the faith, will continue to decay. He says the palsied hand of the papacy is too feeble to arrest the march of human progress. In vain, it will preach new crusades against Freemasonry, or heresy, or republicanism. The world is no longer in a humor to be saddled and bitted like an ass and ridden by Capuchins and Franciscans. I have a 2-volume set at home named Thurlow Weed. Old books, a biography, the story of an individual who was involved in the anti-Masonic society, the anti-Masonic party, here in the United States of America. I don't think he was Catholic. I never saw anything written about his association with Catholicism. But he and others in the United States of America saw what I showed you here earlier, and tried to do something about it by forming the anti-Masonic party. But he said in his book, the election of 1833 demonstrated unmistakably not only that opposition to Masonry as a party and a political aspect had lost its hold upon the public mind. There was no more opposition to Freemasonry in our public mind, but that its leading object, namely to awaken and perpetuate a public sentiment against secret societies, had signally failed. 1833. This discouraging condition of political affairs, after a consultation with, and he names a whole number of men in there, resulted in a virtual dissolution of the anti-Masonic party. Now what that means is from 1833 to 1968, there has been virtually nothing, nobody, no one, no organized opposition to Freemasonry in the United States of America, with the exception of the Vatican. July 3rd, 1907, the necessity of immediate action, that we should act without delay. The partisans of error are to be sought not only among the Church's open enemies, but what is to be most dreaded and deplored in her very bosom. We allude to the ranks of the priesthood. They put into operation their designs for her, meaning the Church, undoing, not from without, but from within. Hence, the danger is present almost in the very veins and heart of the Church. They lay the axe to the faith, so that there is not part of the Catholic truth what they leave untouched. None that they do not strive to corrupt. They easily they do this, so easily lead the unwary into error. Pius X, destruction of one true religion. Given this doctrine of experience united with that of symbolism, every religion, even that of paganism, must be held to be true. Modernists maintain that all religions are true. Well, Assisi, hello. John Paul II, is a modernist. These things have been condemned by his predecessors. Aha! I no longer have continuity. This thing is becoming less contiguous. I have a problem now with what my predecessors have taught and what's been taught here by Pius X and what's being taught now or demonstrated now by John Paul II. So, now I must ask myself, have all these other popes missed it? Did John Paul II, Paul VI, and John the 23rd just finally realize what the faith is? Or has something gone on in Rome to create an entirely new church that never was seen on this planet before? Practical application. Here's what he asked that be done. Anyone who in any way is found to be tainted with modernism is to be excluded without compunction from these offices, whether of government or of teaching, and those who already occupy them are to be removed. Let me ask you a question. If Pope St. Pius X came back, saw what was going on today in the Vatican, what would he do? We order that you do everything in your power to drive out of your diocese any pernicious books that may be in circulation there. The Holy See neglects no means. That means you can steal them, you can burn them, you can rip them apart. But who's going to do that? I have it right here. It's a Vatican document. It must be true. It says, neglects no means to remove. Why? Because they understand, you see, in the wisdom of 1907, that if you promulgate and teach this nonsense, people will lose their souls. So which is the worse evil? Stealing and the burning of books? Or the losing of some child, some young person, some young adult, some adults, eternal soul? Now, Pope Pius XI, Mortalium Animos, on fostering true religious unity, January the 6th, 1928. Now such efforts can meet with no kind of approval among Catholics. What is that? Ecumenism. The effort to form a one-world religion can meet with no kind of approval among Catholics. They presuppose the erroneous view that all religions are more or less good and praiseworthy. Those who hold such a view are not only in error, they distort the true idea of religion and thus reject it. In distorting it, you reject it, falling gradually into naturalism and atheism. To favor this opinion, therefore, to encourage such undertakings is tantamount to abandoning. Let me read that again. To favor this opinion of modernists to form a one-world religion, to promote it, to exemplify it, and to encourage such undertakings is tantamount, meaning the same as abandoning the religion revealed by God. St. John himself, apostle of love, forbade any intercourse with those who professed a mutilated and corrupt form of Christ's teaching. If any man come to you and bring not this doctrine, receive him not into the house, nor say to him, God speed you. Therefore, point 11, since the foundation of charity is faith pure and inviolate, it is chiefly by the bond of one faith that the disciples of Christ are to be united. A federation of Christians, then, is inconceivable.